Welcome back to their hardware news recap for the week. We are back in the studio. Feels good to be back in town and working on content locally. We're in Taiwan for multiple weeks working on Computex and a whole bunch of other coverage. There are probably a couple more engineering discussions we have going up. So we spoke with Noctua's Jacob Dellinger about some really cool topics like fan bearings, things of that nature. So those are still coming out. But for the most part, we are switching back to local content. So for the news this week, we'll be talking about a reported cybercriminal organization, direct quote from AMD, saying that there may be an organization in possession of stolen AMD data. We'll also be talking about DeepCool getting sanctioned by the US government. Further, we'll be going over news from Twitter about an EVGA X670E leaked motherboard. It actually exists. Unfortunately, it will not be made. We'll just squash that right now. But it's still really interesting to look at. We have some small leftover pieces of news from Computex, so some Hyte product discussion, and then additionally we've got Adobe. Adobe, our favorite, getting sued by the US government. Excellent. I mean, that's too bad. That's terrible. But also excellent. But before that, this video is brought to you by Thermaltake and the Tower 300. The Tower 300 is a full-on showcase PC case built to present the computer straight on with its angled tempered glass windows or on a unique mounting stand to show off the build in new ways. The Tower 300 has a layout that positions the GPU fans against a mesh panel with ventilation on the opposite side for liquid coolers and CPUs. There's also an included two 140mm fans up top. The panels use a quick access toolless system to be quickly popped in and out for maintenance, and you can learn more at the link in the description below. First up, our ASUS storyline is done for now. We published a full sit-down interview with the company's head of customer support and the senior manager of customer support alongside some of the marketing people from ASUS. We won't recap it all fully here, but just really briefly, Peggy, the senior manager of customer support, had some firm answers to some of the questions we had and the request for commitments. We appreciated that. So those included this big list of commitments that we published as a TLDR on our website. You should still check out and support the interview though, as that kind of content is really difficult to produce and it's important. This list though contains all the commitments in a short format, really clearly, and just a bullet point list. And it includes refunds under some circumstances, changes to the warranty language, and more. Another small update here too. ASUS has lightly commented on the MicroSD card reader failures of the ROG Ally. The total statement, including a recap of the service changes, was around 8 minutes long. It can be found on the live tab of the ASUS ROG YouTube channel. Here's one of the critical parts though.
What we did was we provided a more consistent supply of power to the SD card reader on one of our board revisions. From there, we got those new boards out through our repair centers, and then we continued to monitor to see if the failure rates dropped. And we did see a positive improvement. The board revision with the more consistent power to the SD reader did reduce the SD reader's failure rate.
Beyond this, it sounds like ASUS didn't 100% root cause the failure, but our interpretation of this statement is that the company thinks it may have resolved the issue by changing power delivery behavior. ASUS noted a, quote, low single-digit % failure rate, which is pretty high if it's anything above 1.0, but otherwise it said it doesn't expect more failures on new devices from what we understood of the statement, and you can find the rest of their comment on their channel. We're just happy they're finally acknowledging it in a more formal way. The other quick closer to Computex is that we've converted a lot of the on-the-ground reporting, the videos, into written content on gamersnexus.net. As always with that website now, it's available without any third-party ads whatsoever. It'll get you a quick update on what we covered if you want it in written format instead of video, and then the videos are all embedded, so that's there for you. The best way to support these deep dives like what we did with ASUS, the free articles on the website, and the sort of mini deep dive with DeepCool that we have in this video, where I had to hire a sanctions firm to help us understand what's even going on, is to go to store.gamersnexus.net and support us directly. You can grab something like our brand new PC badge case magnets. We have packs of 3 of them. One of them is an AMD Ryzen CPU. It's actually basically to scale. It's the same size as an actual AM5 CPU. It's delidded. It has the 2 chiplets and the I/O die. It's got pads on the back of it. So that's available as a case magnet. You can stick onto the steel panel of your case. And then we also have the GN badge that comes with it, which is a flattened version of our GN15 commemorative pint glass. And then we have an Intel delidded CPU as well, where you can see an LGA 1700 style die, silicone adhesive, and substrate, all available as a means to directly support our efforts. Up first, for actual news, there's cybercrime afoot. So AMD is investigating a breach by what it calls a, quote, cybercriminal organization Via a Bloomberg report, AMD has published a statement saying the following, quote, "We are aware of a cybercriminal organization claiming to be in possession of stolen AMD data. We're working closely with law enforcement officials and a third-party hosting partner to investigate the claim and the significance of the data." Now, AMD said claiming here, so it was careful to not outright say it's confirmed there's a data breach, it's confirmed that a third party has access to this information. They did leave some room there. But obviously they're treating it seriously enough to put out a statement and investigate. A Tom's Hardware write-up of the report states that, quote, "Intel broker reportedly stole and is now trying to sell AMD data." Now, Intel broker coincidentally shares a name with Intel. They're not related. So Intel is an intelligence broker, claims to have, if this leak is valid, firmware, source code, ROMs, employee data, and allegedly internal communications from AMD. There have been breaches in the past of motherboard vendors that have actually leaked CPU manufacturer documentation, source code, including Intel as an AMD's competitor, not Intel broker. Last time it was Intel UEFI getting leaked. So outside of the just intellectual property risk of your corporate information getting out there and maybe competitors or foreign actors or whatever having access to things that could advance their own products, the other potential risk here is, or the major one, is low-level breaches or malware development, access to code that could help inform backdoors or inform malware or other vulnerabilities like that. So a forum called Breach Forums, which has been under investigation by the FBI, contains a post by Intel broker that was republished by Bleeping Computer. Quote, "Today I'm selling the AMD.com data breach. Thanks for reading and enjoy," end quote. The poster noted that the data includes an employee database, and again, this is where that list of ROMs and firmware and other information was contained. Up next, in a bit of fun, what if alternate universe, alternate timeline history, hardware fan Jiachun Liu shared images of engineering samples of EVGA's X670E as an AMD platform classified motherboard on Twitter. The posts show how EVGA was working on an AM5 motherboard that was never released. Testing the board with BIOS version 0.00, which supposedly dates back to August 2022, Leo stated that it had, quote, "blazing fast memory training for its time." Specifically, Leo wrote, "Early adopters of X670E will know how painstakingly long it would take for the board to first train the DRAM. This is not the case with X670E classified. I trained JEDEC to 6000 C32 in around 30 seconds, end quote." Now, in terms of his testing setup, Leo stated that he resorted to using, quote, "an improvised LGA 1700 block forced onto the mount." You can see it rotated diagonally there, coupled with a, quote, "kit of ES-A die and an ES, or engineering sample, 7950X processor." Leo also showed off how the board had an NVIDIA SLI logo on its underside, which is interesting considering NVIDIA stopped officially supporting SLI and developing it somewhere around 2020. Attempting to put that to the test, he mentioned that he couldn't get SLI support to work properly. Quote, "I could neither get the SLI Titan XP nor NVLink Titan RTX, would be a game changer for 3D Mark Vantage to work natively." Looking at the board closely, we can see that there's a heatsink-less early design with a rotated motherboard layout. The DRAM is located above the socket, with the power connections all appearing to be 90 degrees at the edge of the board. This was a Kingpin classic for the official Intel boards as well, with intent being easier access and cable management, plugging things into the side of the board. Leo also mentioned that the motherboard's RGB and fan controls didn't work, which caused fans to simply blast during testing. According to Tom's Hardware, the Twitter user purchased 4 prototype boards on the secondhand store Xianyu for $620, though they didn't come with heatsinks. A unit with a heatsink would set him back $1,378. And to shut it down before the disappointment gets too great, EVGA is not actively making this board. It's a leak of a development unit. EVGA unfortunately lost its BIOS development team last year. We did an interview with them before they went to 2 different companies. One of them went to ASRock. I forget where the other guy went, but they've departed. Kingpin has also moved on to new endeavors, and we have a video with him coming up. It probably isn't up already. If it is, you check the channel and see, but really interesting video. He's got some new stuff he's working on in the hardware space, so we'll be breaking the news on that for everybody. Otherwise, it's just kind of a fun tour of his new workshop. So check for that. It may already be live. Okay, up next, the US sues Adobe over consumer protection issues. The legal complaint was made in regards to alleged violations of the Restore Online Shoppers Confidence Act, also known as ROSCA. And we have a, I would say complicated, but a simple relationship with Adobe. We give them money, and then we hope they don't screw us over. And that seems to be how it goes for most people. The complaint reads this, quote, "For years, Adobe has harmed consumers by enrolling them in its default, most lucrative subscription plan without clearly disclosing important plan terms. Adobe fails to adequately disclose to consumers that by signing up for the annual paid monthly subscription plan, or APM plan, they are agreeing to a year-long commitment and a hefty early termination fee, or ETF, that can amount to hundreds of dollars. Adobe clearly discloses the early termination fee only when subscribers attempt to cancel, turning the stealth early termination fee into a powerful retention tool." The complaint continues, quote, "During enrollment, Adobe hides material terms of its annual paid monthly plan in fine print and behind optional text boxes and hyperlinks, providing disclosures that are designed to go unnoticed and that most consumers never see," end quote. The US government also states that Adobe makes cancellation arduous, saying, quote, "Adobe then deters cancellations by employing an onerous and complicated cancellation process." In a press release, the Justice Department wrote this, quote, "Adobe has profited from this hidden fee, misleading consumers about the true costs of a subscription and ambushing them with the fee when they try to cancel, wielding the fee as a powerful retention tool." In the lawsuit, the US government aims to put an end to what it calls as Adobe's unlawful conduct and says it's seeking injunctive relief, civil penalties, equitable monetary relief, as well as other relief. Now, this legal complaint from the US government follows news of the Justice Department suing Apple back in March, which alleged the Silicon Valley tech company violated antitrust laws. This news also comes hot on the heels of the Justice Department and the FTC looking into antitrust inquiries regarding NVIDIA, Microsoft, and OpenAI, where they are currently in an investigation phase. So in other words, the US government is currently in its Oprah phase. You get a lawsuit, you get a lawsuit, everybody gets a lawsuit. In addition to the lawsuit, Adobe has recently come under fire for its updated terms of service, which allow Adobe to analyze users' content, quote, using techniques such as machine learning, end quote, to improve its software and services. In a blog post, Adobe writes, quote, "You always have the option of opting out of our desktop product improvement programs. But, as Right to Repair activist Louis Rossman pointed out, the only visible options at that time, at least, to proceed to access your content are to accept and continue." So there's another factor of this too, which is Adobe's cloud services. We don't use Adobe Cloud. We would very strongly recommend that you don't either if you use Adobe for anything. And one of the, I mean, we've just never been comfortable with it, and this is exactly why. Their license page says under Section A of 4.3, license to cloud content to operate the services and software on your behalf, solely for the purpose of operating the services and software on your behalf, and subject to Section 4.2 ownership, above which states that in all cases you own your content, you grant us a non-exclusive worldwide royalty-free license to do the following with your cloud content: reproduce, distribute, create derivative works, publicly display, publicly perform, and sublicense. Over the years, we've encountered a lot of companies that have claimed terms like this, where they've tried to assert some level of not technically ownership of, but usage rights and licensing to content from creators. So there have been numerous ad contracts where I've shot them down entirely outright because they wanted the rights to, not even wanted, it was like written in a contract. They wanted the rights to republish and use content, which is like secondary advertising. It could be twisted any number of ways. And so we obviously say no, and if they don't agree, then we tell them to go f themselves. But that's how we feel here too, because with Adobe, it is both charging for a service, and then if you use it extensively, charging for cloud storage, and then using the stuff you put there to profit off of it in a tertiary way. It's brilliant in the most evil, draconian, future dystopian way, because it's like, It's 3 layers deep of how do we make money off of this one guy over here, and then use that to sell stuff to other people while still selling stuff to him without paying a license for the stuff. It's insane. Anyway, looking forward to seeing how this progresses. All of this licensing stuff is separate from the U.S. Justice Department and that lawsuit, which that one is about the subscription terms and cancellation. So we'll see how it goes. Sometimes there's a lot of cynicism about big corporations only get a slap on the wrist. Sometimes that's definitely true, absolutely. Other times, though, I mean, the fines for FTC warranty violations, in the case of, I think it was Harley-Davidson, they can go as high as like $47,000 per instance of certain violations, to the extent that you were definitely losing money on each customer that fine is applied to. So it really depends how aggressive they want to be. 100%, sometimes it can just be a slap on the wrist and feels like not enough, or the company has profited more than they'll ever pay in penalties for the violation. But it really depends. Sometimes it is harsh enough to actually make a difference. So we'll see. They'll have to go through the court system first. Up next is DeepCool. We have a sort of a mini investigation for this one. So DeepCool subsidiary Beijing DeepCool Industries Co. Limited found itself on the U.S. sanctions list within the last couple weeks. Because sanctions law is, believe it or not an area where we are particularly well-versed or focused, we ended up hiring a Washington, D.C. based firm that specializes in it for consultation on this issue so we could be better informed and present you all with what this means. So the firm did not want to be named. It's not uncommon, really, but they did give us background information on what's going on. So to be clear about this one will contain elements of politics. It is Gamers Nexus policy not to comment on any political matters unless they are directly related to technology. In this instance, we have not included any political commentary in this report. It's just the facts. So hopefully you can just take it as it is, which is a neutral report of what's going on and what this means for DeepCool. Okay, with that stated, the U.S. State Department published an article entitled, quote, "Taking Additional Measures to Degrade Russia's Wartime Economy," end quote. The article states this, quote, "In this action, the Department of State is imposing sanctions on more than 100 individuals and entities. These designations aim to disrupt sanctions evasion and backfilling and target entities in multiple third countries, including the People's Republic of China, or PRC. The department's designations also constrain Russia's future energy revenues, building on previous sanctions, stalling the development of Russia's Arctic LNG-2 project and other Russian future energy projects." The U.S. State Department website also says, pursuant to Section 1AI of EO 14024, or Executive Order 14,024, the following entities are being designated for operating or having operated in the technology sector of the Russian Federation economy. And they've got a list of companies. One of them, going back to the quote here, is Beijing DeepCool Industries Co. Limited, is a PRC-based company involved in the supply of over $1 million worth of CHPL items to Russian companies, including the U.S. designated Russia-based. We're going to go with Tascom for a short version of that, and then Novi. So we did some basic digging here, and our best understanding of it right now is, and this is a complex, like, multinational issue, so we couldn't get all the specifics, but our best understanding is that the parent company is Beijing DeepCool SciTech, as in SCI Tech Co. Limited, and that Beijing DeepCool Industries Co. Limited, which is the one that's on the sanctions list, is a subsidiary of that parent. Now, to the best of our understanding, it looks like DeepCool's US-based subsidiary is under Beijing DeepCool Industries Co. Limited, the one that got sanctioned, and therefore the US subsidiary is also going to be affected directly by these sanctions. So as we understand it, the parent isn't, at least it's not listed in this direct report from the State Department, but one of the critical subsidiaries is, and then DeepCool's factory appears based on their website to be held by Shenzhen DeepCool Industries Co. Limited, which is another different company and hasn't been named, at least in this report. The law firm we hired told us that this is the specially designated nationals list. They describe it as, quote, "the most comprehensive sanctions list a company can be on." It is administered by the U.S. government and means no U.S. person or company can do any business with them going forward whatsoever. So that's what the law firm said to us. They also further explained this, quote, DeepCool was placed on this list for having supplied over $1 million worth of their products, which happened to be on a high priority list of items that the U.S. government has marked as contributing and critical for Russia's war efforts. Beijing DeepCool Industries is accused of supplying them to two companies. Neither of them are Russian government entities, the firm said. Now, when asked, the firm explained to us that currently it is not clear if either of these two companies have any form of direct Russian government backing or affiliation. The firm explained to us that one of the two companies is a manufacturer of computers, memory devices, and information security equipment. From our own research into it, it appears to maybe be some form of SI or system integrator. For information system integrators would include companies like Maingear, Cyberpower, iPower, as opposed to commonly the phrase OEM is used for larger entities like Dell. So it appears to be some kind of SI or is a Russia-based equivalent of them. The other company works with that system integrator, so they work together, and is a freight transportation company, i.e. a logistics company. This is important. The firm told us, quote, these companies were sanctioned for operating in the transportation sector, end quote. We next asked the maybe obvious question, which is that the US government's title for that State Department post uses the phrase, quote, degrading Russia's wartime economy. So the question for the firm was whether there is any indication at this time from the US government that DeepCool was directly involved in some form of military purchasing or sales. That was our question. The firm stated this, quote, there's no indication of military involvement, but this is also not the standard anymore. What OFAC, it's a US office, is saying is that Russia has essentially transitioned to a full war economy, meaning their supply systems are for the war effort. If you operate in certain sectors of the war economy, the US deems you as contributing to the war effort. By selling to these two Russian companies that were prior on the sanctions list, DeepCool has been designated as operating in the transportation sector and technology sector of the war economy. There's no direct indication of military sales, but it is always possible it's based on intelligence not available. So our best interpretation of all of this is the US sanctioned the two listed Russian companies previously. I think it was last year when I was looking. One of the two companies appears to be an SI, the other appears to be freight and logistics. DeepCool sold to or shipped to those companies at some point. It's unclear to me right now whether that is after they were sanctioned or before, but at some point they shipped or sold to those two sanctioned companies, and therefore DeepCool is now on the sanctions list that we just went through. So we asked the firm what this means for DeepCool's existing U.S. relationships. The firm said, quote, there is a wind down period within the Office of Foreign Assets Controller, OFAC, which is within the Department of Treasury. OFAC has provided a general license which authorizes the wind down of transactions involving DeepCool through July 27th. Now we asked the firm what would happen after July 27th, and the firm told us that basically absolutely no more business can be conducted with them, and banks would block transactions, things of that nature. So we went and spoke to some system integrators in the industry. There are a lot of US-based PC building companies, such as Maingear, iPower, Cyberpower, Starforge, Puget, companies like that, build in the US. We spoke with a couple of system integrators, can't name which ones, and what we heard from one of them is that the company is immediately going to be destroying all DeepCool inventory. It already bought and paid for the inventory. The inventory is already in the warehouse, and apparently these transactions took place prior to DeepCool landing on this list. Out of an abundance of caution for liability, the company is destroying the inventory rather than installing it in systems it's building in the US to ship out. So in other words, they are going to source new supply for whatever those components may be, likely cases, coolers, maybe power supplies. So one of the other companies informed us that it has a nearly 3-month payment term for DeepCool for inventory that is currently being shipped to the US on ocean freight, and the company is not planning on paying for that inventory and is not planning on using that inventory. DeepCool also owns a US-based subsidiary with several employees. The law firm told us that, quote, the blocking action applies to all of their subsidiaries. This applies to US subsidiaries as well. Because of this action, that US subsidiary will have to close down. Any entity that DeepCool owns 50% or more of, if it's an entity affiliated with DeepCool, should be stayed clear of as well, end quote. Our understanding is that all the staff of the US entity will likely be unemployed soon. Currently, though, they are still working as far as we're aware. So pretty interesting. This story is huge. It is very rare we get a story this much bigger than the computer hardware industry that also aligns with our coverage spectrum. So, we're going to try and do a little more investigation. I want to set the right expectations, though. We can sit down with effectively executive leadership at ASUS and dig deeper there. And that's awesome. But it seems to me very unlikely that we would be able to get any more here because we're talking about governments and they're huge. And it's kind of like who are we to think we're going to get more answers from them. But ultimately, if the US government decides not to release further information, that might be the end of the story, at least for now. Other than reporting on whatever the consequences of it are, such as DeepCool's future. Still, I'm going to email the U.S. State Department to see if I can get anything. I doubt it, but we'll try. You kind of wonder if they see from Gamers Nexus, just what? Who are you? But we'll see. Maybe I have the wrong read on it. Anyway, we'll try and do some more digging. If you're in the industry and you know something that you have some kind of evidence for, you think I should know about it, so we can report on it. You likely know how to get a hold of me already. Send us an email or ping me however you know how, and we'll use that information if it's supported. But anyway, as for DeepCool's future, it's uncertain. It looks kind of bleak right now. As likely many of you know, we were running ads for their coolers just recently, up through the last couple of months. So that ad relationship is basically concluded. We are not running any further ads with them. That's going to be true for a lot of businesses too, where these system integrators, they are, like I said, not going to ship with DeepCool products. They're not ordering more DeepCool products. Existing inventory is potentially getting destroyed or at least long-term shelved until there's more movement on this issue, if there's ever any more movement. So businesses are stopping relationships with DeepCool. This means retailers will likely stop stocking their products if they haven't already. And it looks pretty bleak for DeepCool. We're not sure if they will be able to get reclassified. Our understanding is that DeepCool is investigating those options, but we have no official information right now. And they just opened a brand new factory that is supposed to be pretty expensive. Some YouTubers have done videos of it. It looks very advanced. And that factory probably has mortgages and loans and all kinds of things to even exist. And so if all their orders suddenly stop, they could be in a bad position where they're very over leveraged. And so anyway, a sudden loss of the vast majority of its revenue could be a death knell for the company. It depends on how all this progresses though. And that's the report we have for now. So it is not clear what the immediate future is, other than what is clear is that everyone's going to stop working with DeepCool per the US sanctions list. So that is our mini investigation of this story. And we'll see if we can get more for you all. Again, if you're in the industry, you know something, ping me. Okay, last topic. We're going to go back to just some straight up products, some hardware stuff. So while at Computex, we visited Hyte's booth toward the end of the show to check out some of the products. This is one that we didn't cover in a standalone video. So to recap some of the stuff here, the company introduced its new display for the Hyte Y70 series cases, which were so popular previously that they depleted the display supply for that size. Hyte has since hired a new factory and begun production of its own first-party supply. This is actually a factory we're going to be visiting soon to film the manufacturing process of the screen and hopefully of the whole Y70. The Y70 Touch Infinite is the new case, running a 14.5-inch screen at 688 by 2560 resolution. Hyte says that the Y70 Touch Infinite has a sharper image quality, which it says is a result of the new display. The case will cost $380 with that display, so enormously expensive. Display upgrade kits for the existing Y70 cases is about $200. The company's running a promo for $160 for those who already bought the non-touch with proof of purchase. And other new products include 3 new colors named Taro, Blueberry, and Strawberry, which seems to be a theme this year. And then Hyte is also introducing its new thick Q80 liquid cooler, which they described to us as an extended Q60 with the same thickness radiator and fans. The Q80 will have a brand new cold plate with a claimed 50% increase in fin area. And then Hyte expects about a 2 degree per 100 watt improvement at most. Other new products included the P60 Duo, which aims to eliminate the screen in place of a simpler pump cap with ultra bright LEDs, which would reduce it to a sub $200 price point in theory. All right, next one, Xbox. So Microsoft has revealed 3 new Xbox SKUs. So X going to give it to you with a new 1 terabyte Robot White Xbox Series S. They also have a 1 terabyte digital edition Xbox Series X, also in Robot White. And they have a special edition 2 terabyte, that's, can't just get 2 terabytes anywhere, Galaxy Black Edition Xbox Series X. These are supposed to launch holiday 2024. Now, these shouldn't be confused with the existing white 512 gigabyte Xbox Series S, carbon black 1 terabyte Xbox Series S, or black 1 terabyte Xbox Series X. And the Xbox Series X shouldn't be confused with the Xbox One X, which is sort of a mid-generational jump that released in 2017. And of course, you shouldn't confuse the Xbox One X with the Xbox One. And when I say Xbox One, I don't mean the original Xbox, which technically is the Xbox One, at least sequentially. Anyway, to come full circle, Xbox 360. That's it for hardware news this week. Thanks for watching. As always, subscribe for more. Go to the channel and check out that ASUS interview if you missed it. At least check out the conclusion of it, and you can go to gamersnexus.net for the short recaps of a lot of the news we covered over the past couple weeks. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. See you all next time.